To moderate our panel tonight, we have Nell Minow, the movie mom. Nell, you want to come on out? And on our panel is Michael Barker, who you met before the film Sony Pictures Classics. Paul Cox. And Omer Mozaffar.
Wow. Okay. Everybody, we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to open it up for questions, so I want you to start thinking of your questions now. And yes, I am going to ask each of these men to tell me what they think she decided. Okay? So get ready. I'd be glad to hear what you all think about that, too. First I want to say to Mike, you are like the anti-elevator pitch guy, aren't you? You're sort of the person who takes on movies that cannot be described in an elevator ride.
That's very true. Not in 25 words or less. That movie just blows me away. You know, it's not by accident that that movie was nominated for the Oscar for the best screenplay. It's an amazing screenplay. And also, at the Berlin Film Festival, the jury did not know which actor to give the best actor and actress prize to, so they gave it to the whole cast, which was a first.
And would you tell
the best picture prize too.
And would you tell them the special relationship between the young girl in the movie?
Well, the girl is Asghar's daughter, and he wrote the role for her. And she's just so heartbreaking in every moment of the film. You know, I've seen it many times, and the thing that just so amazes me, and if you know Asghar, it really hits home, that no matter how specific it gets in the Iranian culture, the more we identify with all of these people as if they're the same as us. And we realize that people are the same everywhere. What's not the same are the governments. And that's what the movie is about for me. And then one other thing that Roger writes so beautifully in the program is that every one of these characters is a flawed character. And the movie is like a thriller because you can't decide with every one of those characters. One minute you're with them, another minute you frown upon them, and then it hits home to us how we are all flawed characters.
Yeah, I second only to Roger's excellent, exquisite description of this film, as I wanted to share with you what Wesley Morris said about it. He said that in this film, the dilemmas achieve the delicate arrangement of ethical origami. And I thought that was a wonderful description because every time you think you know what's going on with these characters, or you begin to get a feeling, it turns itself inside out. But I want to go back to my original question. How do you market a film like this? What makes you think that you can sell this in a world where everybody's waiting in line to see the Avengers?
Well, kind of the way I just described it. I think you set it up as a film that you will identify with. Also, the idea of opening the newspaper every day and seeing politicians demonize Iranians as if they are a foreign form of humanity. You say, go see this movie and you will learn about the Iranian people and how they are people just like you and me. And the issues are the same, whether it's father-son, father-daughter, marriage. The courtroom is amazing. You know, every time I see the court, I think in America, we might learn a thing or two from the Iranian court of jurisdiction.
Yeah, I'm a lawyer, so I noticed that there were no lawyers in those courtrooms. You know, I think it's more important, actually, more important than the fact that each of the characters is flawed, is that each of the characters is so true to themselves, so honest, so deeply trying to do the right thing, and I found that very moving. Well, I would like to hear from Omer and Pete, Paul, sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm a little nervous. I would like to hear what you think about how accurately this represents the Iranian people, since you were both expert on that.
I don't know that I'm an expert, but I would say that there were many, many, many subtle details that probably were not there in the translation. For example, the main husband and wife, I'm sure you picked up on the fact that they were the wealthy, whereas the other family was not as wealthy. But they were also very westernized. If you saw all the pictures in the background, you saw Da Vinci, you saw a Native American. And they were also very conscious about the fact, at least the father was very conscious about the fact that he was Persian, he was Iranian, right? Even though his name is Nader, which is an Arabic name, right? And so there might have been some subtle, almost, self-dislike that was taking place there. And there are other very, very, very significant subtleties. There's a conversation where she wants him to pay the couple off, and she says, "Count this as my dower." And essentially, in an Islamic marriage, we find the same practice in Iranian high society as well as South Asian high society. Well, the Islamic practice is that the first obligation that the husband has to his wife is to give a gift, and she dictates what the gift is. Okay. Now, this has also become a status symbol, so what you see in the marriage contract is that he will give her some exorbitant amount of money plus $5. Okay. And so at the time of the marriage, he'll give her $5, meaning I'm saying if this is an American society, and the other $50,000 or $60,000, in theory, he's supposed to pay later, but it never gets paid. And so she's saying you can use this. So I thought it was remarkably accurate and very, very subtle in many places.
My turn. Well, I'm certainly not an expert. I've been there a few times and seen it. There are very few films that actually make you feel these characters. It's that amateur acting, which we call amateur acting, is so spectacular and so real. And to capture a slice of reality, we seem to have lost that in the West, because these people are just bleeding with it, and automatically you feel their hearts and their souls and what they think. I think it's absolutely spectacular. And that we've lost the art of feeling on film is extraordinary, isn't it? And in the end, when you said, with whom is he going home, I think it's just a wonderful ending. That's the question we ask, but the question shouldn't be asked, really. That girl bleeds and screams out, "I want to go home with both of them. They must be together." And how could we possibly ever give that form and shape, that scream of that girl's heart? How can we ever, in our brutality of living, where we've lost our hearts more or less, how can we ever? Why is a crazy country like Iran, like so many wonderful films they've made, they're so suppressed, and a few idiots run the country? It's extraordinary. The people are fantastic and very beautiful, and that's the oldest civilization on earth. They're just extraordinary people. Why are they still capable of expressing what it means to belong to the human race? Well, why is that? I remember a conversation with a Russian director a long time ago, and I made some stupid comment about him not being free and I being free. And he said, "I'm much freer than you are. I don't have a box office to worry about." He had the wrong person, because I've never worried about the box office.
I think that was clear this afternoon. Do you think that, to pursue your point, Omer, how differently do you think American audiences will react to this film as differently from Iranian audiences?
Well, I have to say there were many points in the film where I started laughing really, really hard, and then nobody else laughed. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm not understanding something. But I think that's exactly it. That in terms of the sympathetic nature of our characters, we all feel that. In terms of the cultural differences, there are some things that many of us will laugh at, and others will believe it's a completely serious moment. Some of those moments were very serious from our perspective as an American audience. From my perspective as a person who might be more in tune with this culture, they're actually very, very funny. When the school teacher or the tutor is standing up to the father or the other husband, she says, I'm not a coward, and everybody here was silent. I started laughing because she was essentially saying, the hell with you, I'm going to do whatever you want, or whatever I want. And so there will be those subtleties, but I think that's true with any movie from a foreign culture, that we connect to the universals of the human hearts that are involved, and then we also are taken into this other world, hoping to get a taste of their flavor.
I'd like you to talk a little bit more about some of the signifiers that we may have overlooked. We certainly could tell that the headscarf was different between the two women, but what were some of the other indicators about the religiousness? Was it, asking them to swear on the Quran, which you would not imagine them doing in their own house, or what are some of the other indicators?
Very nice. Well, so you saw that the wealthy couple, they were frequently dressed in blue jeans. I kept looking to see if the other husband was ever dressed in blue jeans. I don't recall seeing that. A small side point, you notice that they were covering the women were covering their hair even at home. That's more related to the conventions of the cinema as opposed to Iranian culture. They would all be taking off their hijabs or their chadors when they're at home, but because this is on camera and this is a public forum anyways, they will still be dressed fully covered in front of the camera. I mentioned the point about the names. He names his daughter with a Persian name. The other family, they have very, very Arabic names. Hojjat and Sumaya are very, very classic Arabic names. Nader is a classic Arabic name, whereas Simin, I don't believe so, and Terme is definitely not Arabic. I'll have to think some more, but those were the things that kept getting repeated throughout the film. And in fact, when their daughter was studying, she was studying the Sasanian Empire, which is essentially the Persian Empire. And the Persian Empire is around until Islam arrives. And so for many Iranians, that's especially a part of the Iranian consciousness. The transformation from the Persian Empire to the rise of Islam, and for many, it's a connection with Arabs that many dislike.
How would you describe the Indian film business these days? The Iranian film business these days. Do you feel that it's booming? Do you feel that there are tremendous opportunities there? Do you feel that there will be more of the Iranian films coming to America?
Well, there's so many incredible Iranian directors, starting with Abbas Kiarostami and Majidi, Makhmalbaf, and his entire family. And they really have something to say. Unfortunately, the authorities in Iran really comes down hard on them. Jafar Panahi, who's a good friend of ours, we had a film called Offside. He was incarcerated a year and a half ago because of speaking out against the oppression of the students. And he's not allowed by the government to make a movie for 20 years. And
So
this is something, we need to fight with everything we have against this kind of repression of artists. what I can't get over is just the film skill of these directors. You know, you say, how are American audiences going to respond to the film? They respond to the film as any riveting movie on any subject. It is a full meal. It is brilliant direction on every count. The editing just is staggering, you know, those choices. And the way the film moves, it's equal to any thriller I know. And I think audiences all over the world take it that way. Now, I don't know if they learned that from, there are film schools in Iran or how they do that. But you look at Kiarostami's film, he almost makes a new film language that you've never seen anywhere else. It is really quite a filmmaking community, and they are very, very close.
The opening scene in this movie is one of the most striking that I remember. The idea of having us, the audience, sit in the place of the judge, I think really not only sets the stage for the rest of the film.
You're in instantly.
Yeah,
You're in it.
Yeah, and also the focus on those two extraordinary faces of those two actors, I think is really one of the most riveting opening scenes that I've ever seen.
I have a question. This might be a marketing issue. I noticed the title. This was the first time I'd ever seen this movie, and I was absolutely blown away. But I noticed the title was Jodaye Nadar as Simin. So it was a separation between Nader and Simin.
Yes, it was a much longer title. It had their names in it. And we talked with Asghar about it, and we felt just calling it a separation would translate better to a wider audience.
And so as I watched the film, I tried to look at it from both perspectives. When I look at the film as being called a separation, aside from marketing, then this film reminded me quite a bit of something like Babel or Crash, where everyone is communicating, but they're not really communicating, right? They're speaking at people more than speaking with people. And then looking at it from the perspective of the separation between the husband and wife, that's the central plot line. That's what really struck with me.
Yeah, there were several different separations in the movie, and and with regard to your point, I think the scene that brought that home most powerfully to me is when the most honest statement from anybody is when the mother's talking to the father with Alzheimer's and telling him the truth in a way that she hasn't brought herself to tell to anybody else. I thought that was absolutely fascinating.
That was interesting. It always gets me, you know, she's the one that's ready to leave, but she seems to have the strongest connection to this old man, you know. Yeah. They seem to not have any problem communicating.
And he
really
says
something.
Her name. That's really
over
the
and over.
only word that we hear from him, yeah. What difference does an Oscar make in raising the visibility of a film like this? Is that important?
Well, a big difference. And what it means is it gives the film posterity. And this is a film that was doing well anyway, but because of the tremendous critical response, it won more critics awards than almost any film I can think of. It was working. But when you win an Oscar, if the film is one that generates great word of mouth like this, the film just grows and it becomes an evergreen that lasts year after year after year, because that idea of an Oscar winner with that trophy, years from now when someone's heard of it and wants to see something they haven't seen, they're going to try that. And so it really is a confirmation of posterity and revenues to come.
I think some people in this, even in this very sophisticated group of filmgoers, might not know the way that a foreign language film gets nominated for an Oscar. Doesn't it have to? Yes. Would you like to explain what that is?
You want me to get into that?
Yeah, because it's not the way that English language film.
I got into that once before here a few years ago, and I think I got into trouble. So basically,
we won't tell anyone.
The rules of the Academy are that each country submits one film, which is kind of outrageous when you think of France having so many films and Iceland maybe having one. But the fact of the matter is each country submits one film. There's a committee in each country, and the makeup of that committee is very different from country to country. In Spain, it's a group of like 750 people from the Film Academy, and in other countries, it's a smaller group that's designated. Basically, once these films are selected, there's about 60 of them, around 60, and they're watched by Academy members in Los Angeles. I don't know the exact number. I think it's a few hundred, and they're pared down to a short list of 9. And then they're pared down by smaller committees. Well, one is there are 10 people taken from the group, the original 200 and so, that are combined with 10 more people from the creative community in New York and Los Angeles, so they get some New York artists involved that are Academy members. And those 30 people designate the 5 from the 9. Then when you have the 5, every Academy member that has seen all 5 films, that cannot be, it's the only one of the only categories that you cannot see it on DVD, have to see in a screening, whether it's a screening the Academy has, or it's in a movie theater, or it's in a film festival. So basically the entire Academy doesn't vote. We never know what that number is, and that's how it's
It's the ones who have
designated.
time and interest to go to all
Yes,
candidates.
I was kind of relieved that the one of the 9 in the short list was a 4.5-hour movie from Taiwan. I was kind of relieved that didn't make it because I didn't know if I would be able to vote.
What do you do when you had 3 films up?
Yes.
So what do you do? I mean, isn't that like?
Well, actually, because of every year, we usually have 1, sometimes 2. We've had 3 a few times, 3 times. It's easier in a category where you have rules like that to have 3 where everyone gets along because they know it's not, you can't buy the foreign film Oscar. You can't spend more money on one, and it doesn't happen in the foreign language film category. It just doesn't. Mm-hmm. So we always spend exactly the same on all 3 films.
And what were the other 2?
The other 2, was Footnote from Israel.
That's a great movie.
And Agnieszka Holland's movie In Darkness from Poland.
Right.
Yeah.
And what difference do critics make to a movie like this?
Very important. Critics, in a case like this movie, if critics really stand up and shout about the movie in a critical mass, say, it brings it to people's attention, and it kind of jump starts it and allows for a word of mouth to start happening.
Paul, this movie reminded me a little bit of your style because of I guess what you used the term amateur. I was going to say sort of the intimacy and the naturalness of the acting style, and because of the anguish, I guess I want to say, of the characters. Did it feel that way to you?
Yeah, I certainly identify strongly with this stuff. What also amazes me each time a film comes out like this and somebody like Michael picks it up, because not many people in his position would actually see that this is a fantastic film. Most of those people are fools. And
I'm glad I'm not a fool.
but it is true, there's such ignorance, and every time a film like that succeeds, you would say that the people that make those decisions of what we are actually going to see, that they would wake up. Hey, it is also possible to make a film very entertaining and very engrossing and also very giving. This film feeds your soul, it gives you something to think about. You're not being patronized. It's not made for bums on seats, but fellow dreamers. It is an amazing gift. Now, again, congratulations, because it's so important that we have people like Michael and
Thank you.
pick these films up. If you hadn't picked it up, and it has to be said, it would only be seen in Iran and in film clubs around the world, because a lot of people are very passionate about Iranian films. You know, they have an extraordinary humanity about them, and that is rare. Most people being so patronized when they go to a movie, and you're not being patronized when you see a film like that. One more point about this film also. This film is made for the average cocaine budget of the average American film.
Do you know, what was the budget for this?
I can't confirm that.
What was the budget for the film?
I
And
don't-
You
I
came in
don't
after
know.
it was already made, right?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's very low.
It would not even be $1 million, it's less.
That's right.
You know, it would be, I could tell you probably exactly. You know, it is disgusting that we can't do this. If you say you can easily make a film for $1 million or less, they say you must be mad, you know, you can't do that sort of thing. And so I think it is bizarre and absurd that a lot of films that actually, let's not actually go into this because I find this, you know, $200-300 million for a ridiculous film, and
Yeah.
then
And
often
another
they
100
lose
million
the
for
lot.
marketing.
No, you know, I remember when we had The Lives of Others, a German film, about 5 or 6 years ago, and we were in Los Angeles. And we were in Los Angeles. I was with Florian, and we were going around and talking about the film and so forth. And in LA, everybody wanted to know how much the movie cost. And he said, "Well, let me try to translate, you know, the euros into the dollars." And then he would say $1.8 million, and they just wouldn't believe him. They just wouldn't believe him. But that's what it cost.
Was that your salary?
Not mine.
Well, no, but that's what they would say.
Yeah.
The director says, "Oh, it cost $1 million." I've had this before. Then they say, "Oh, is that all you got
That's
paid?"
always so amazing. You know, when we had this animated film, Waltz with Bashir, that was another one. Ari Folman, we would go around, and Ari would be on the animation panel. He'd be next to the guy who did Captain Nemo, the Nemo, you know, and he'd say, "How many animators did you have?" He said, "Well, you saw that clip there with the wave. There were 46." And the guy and Ari goes, "Oh, you had 46 for the whole film?" No, that we had 46 for that scene with the wave. And then they asked Ari. He said, "How many did I have?" "Well, let's see. I actually had 8, but I only had 5 because the three of them had to graduate from school before they could start working on the film." But you know, it's just boggles the mind, the difference in the costs of these things, you know?
Right. Well, it helps if you got one guy doing the writing, producing, and directing, and
Yeah.
you know, and he did an extraordinary job. And I don't know. I mean, he wasn't building sets, right? He wasn't. You know.
But you know, I was thinking about Paul. We had a film of Paul's years ago called A Woman's Tale, which is an incredible movie. And and Roger was a big champion of that film. Unfortunately, the New York Times wasn't. I'm still bitter about it, but you know, we won't go there. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of the humanity in that film is portrayed in a similar way the characters are in this film. Because even though they were professional actors, you never felt they were professional actors.
I read a quote from the writer-director of this film who called it a detective story without any detectives. And I guess my response to that was really, he makes us, the audience, the detective, because we're looking for clues constantly throughout the entire movie. And I thought that there was a wonderful parallel. I talked about how striking that opening scene was with us, the audience, being the judge, and then it's just reversed really at the end with the focus completely on the daughter. She's really become the judge.
I'd like to make a little plug for the women of Iran and the women in this film, because they are powerful, they are in charge, they are wise and wonderful, and I think these women are spectacular.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And beautiful.
and very beautiful. I think the cleaner the woman is, and her little daughter, just very wonderful.
The lead actress is in person as drop-dead gorgeous, if not more, than, I mean, she came to the Oscars, and I have to tell you, everyone, I mean, she was the center, because she was just so beautiful.
She has a wonderful elegance and grace about her, and I thought she did a spectacular job. She's not an amateur actress, obviously. She's a professional, right? Yeah. What is the director's next project, do you know?
He's in Paris writing a screenplay with Yasmina Reza, who wrote the
Oh,
play
sure.
Art and Gods of Carnage and God of Carnage. And I think that's his next film. I know he's doing that screenplay now in Paris.
Wonderful.
One other thing I want to say,
yeah.
though, about this film, I've been doing this really a long time, and this is the first film in a long time where directors, filmmakers, adore it beyond all films. After the Oscar nominations came out, and Tom and I, my partner and I, had a meeting with Woody Allen about the next film, and in the middle of the meeting, he said, "Tell me something." I said, "What's that?" How could Midnight in Paris be nominated for Best Picture and Director and Separation not be nominated? And he said, "That's like the best movie in years." And then you'd run into someone like Mike Nichols, and he'd say the same thing. And Larry Kasdan called me and said the same thing, and Taylor Hackford. Filmmakers are in awe of this film, and that's how you know, this is the real deal.
I think one reason for that, I'd like to hear what you think, Omer, but I think one reason for that is that it's so beautifully structured. And that's something that I really respect and that I think we don't get enough of in storytelling. And so I think that's it, and it's also beautifully cinematic. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. As I watched this, as a film viewer, a film student, this was a candy store of just amazing techniques in the layering of the story, and the way the story, little by little, piece by piece, with a moment, reveals itself all the way through to the last moment. The way each character reveals him or herself. This is the kind of movie you watch 20 times to learn new things, and then there's still new things in every single viewing.
Do you think that the film is an accurate representation of the conflicts between the more upper middle class and the lower class in Iran?
That's a good question. I don't know, and I say that not because of a lack of knowledge of what's happening in Iran, but because of just the nature of the film conversation. That we do find that theme very frequently. We find it in Majid, these movies especially, this distinction between the people who would be what we would consider like the suburbanites, and then those who would be essentially what we would call blue-collar workers, even though in our culture they're essentially often the same people. But the point being that that's how they're depicted often in Iranian cinema. But I believe that's a lot of that is also a commentary on the direction society is taking. So it may not be so much that here's a class conflict, but here's a criticism of the ideals of the nation and the failure to implement those practices into the lives of the people. So it's hard to say. I mean, it's conversation, definitely.
I sometimes joke that the difference between studio films and independent international films is the clarity of the ending. That the more money you spend on a film, the more absolutely certain you want people to feel that they understand it. And I think that this is a good example. But I think Iranian films in particular seem to very often have an open-ended ending. Is that a political choice? Is it a cultural choice? Is it a artistic choice?
I'd say the answer is yes. To all those points. At the end of the day, it becomes an artistic choice. I mean, I can throw in a theological choice here too. The theological point would be, okay, and God knows, right? The first line of the film is, I think, Binam Khuda, which is in the name of God. Most of these films begin with some sort of benediction. So I think it's all of those, and at the end of the day, it is the director's choice. We find that in Abbas Kiarostami also, his films often are very, very open-ended in the last shot, but we're all following every single step, waiting to see what happens, and I think that's the actual success right there.
All right. Are you going to make a prediction, or you want to make a guess on how she was going to pick at the end?
As an American viewer, I'm going to say that she basically told her parents to go to hell. As a human viewer, I would say that her answer is that she wanted to go home.
Mike, you want to make a prediction
Well,
or guess?
I think just like the movie we've gone through, they just get deeper and deeper and deeper into it, and the story will continue. It's just going to keep going. They couldn't have her resolve it because there isn't resolution as long as there is this situation with these two people on opposite sides of the screen. And so there's the next chapter.
And she's at exactly the right age where she's destined to be disappointed by both of her parents, and she wasn't. I'm sorry. My mother always says the two worst years of a woman's life are the year she's 13 and the year her daughter is. So. Okay, and she had 3 daughters. All right, so we're going to open it up for questions. All you need to do is stay where you are, and our microphone wranglers will scoot right over to you. So raise your hands, and let's hear some really good questions for this extraordinary panel.
From the balcony.
Okay? I see. Hi.
Hi, thank you. As I was watching the film, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, as I was watching the film, so I was thinking about how it's clearly about separation, the title, but it's also about moments where characters come together. And I was curious what you all thought or how you would respond to the different layers of that connection, those connections. So sometimes they're based on class, and there's class solidarity, and sometimes they're based on gender, and you see scenes with women together, almost conspiratorial, but not quite. And then there are scenes where the men speak to each other as if they can understand each other best without their families present. We see even scenes with the 2 girls together. So there's so many layers there, and I was just wondering if you would speak to, I guess, how that is reflected in the film in terms of Iranian society, but also just generally how skillfully that seems to be used in the movie without really calling attention to it and as any gimmick or anything.
Thank you for that. You also reminded me of something else, another place of separation in terms of the use of language. The woman who is hired as the caretaker, when she would say goodbye, she would say Khoda Hafiz, which is essentially, literally it means God is the guardian, but this is also something coming from Arabic Islamic culture, and then he responded in a very Persian response. So that would be even another dimension of separation.
That vocabulary lesson, was that an Arabic Farsi kind of thing?
Yeah, it was an Arabic Farsi point, because there's one point where she translates a word with an Arabic translation, and then he corrects her, tells her to use a Persian translation. How does it reflect Iranian society? I think what it does reflect is just the issue of how do we define ourselves, right? If we were to ask everyone in this room, what are the most central aspects of your consciousness, your identity, right? Would it be your language? Would it be your accent? Would it be what city you live in? Would it be your profession? I think in our culture, your profession is a big part of it, right? It might be for some people your political affiliation, right? And whether or not that's something representative of Iranian society, I think that's representative of humanity in general. That we sometimes inherit ways to define ourselves, and sometimes we make conscious choices to define ourselves. But as soon as you do that, you also run the risk of separating yourself from other people. And I think the goal of this is to show consequences of what happens when we do that.
I think there's another influence too, based on my conversations with Asghar. Now this is me talking, so Asghar is very much steeped in American playwrights and American plays. He knows a lot about Arthur Miller, a lot. And he knows about William Faulkner. And you know, every time I see the movie and I think about what you're talking about, the layers of the characters, it really reminds me of the way the characters interplay in Death of a Salesman. And I think Asghar is probably influenced by that strain of American plays.
Well, certainly you get the feeling from several of the characters that they're saying that attention must be paid. You know, they're really wanting that. Do we have another question?
Yes.
Some hands up.
Down here to your right, fifth
Okay.
row, gentlemen.
Okay.
I want to thank you for bringing this film here and not dubbing the film. In one of the panel discussions we had yesterday, it was discussed that some foreign films are dubbed. Who makes those decisions on who dubs or when a film gets dubbed?
Very few people dub films anymore. You want to know the main reason for that? Because, first of all, the people that go to these films want the authenticity of the film to be there. Second, something we learned with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Old fogies like us in the mainstream, in my generation and older, they have a problem with subtitles, mainstream. Young people have no problem with subtitles, none. They text every day, they turn on the TV, they see it along the bottom of the screen. They'll go see our other movie, The Raid. They may not go see In Darkness or Footnote, but the fact of the matter is, whatever problem they're going to have with a particular film, it's not going to be the subtitles. So I don't see dubbing becoming more of a reality in the future. I think there'll always be martial arts films where it'll be tried, but the fact is, The Raid is a martial arts film, and we wouldn't even think of dubbing it.
Yeah, my sister-in-law lives in Italy, and all the American films are dubbed there because Italians, she tells me, are not very good with subtitles, and I think that's horrifying because
Oh yeah,
it's...
the Woody Allen movie just had the world premiere in Rome, and someone went thinking they'd get a sneak peek, and I knew, it was like, oh my God, it was dubbed in Italian. Yeah. So, you want to hear Woody's voice in Italian.
My sister-in-law was telling me that Superman said whatever the Italian equivalent of it was, formidable. It just doesn't seem right. Okay, another question?
Very slightly to your right, 6 rows up.
This is for Omer. I would like it if you could expand a little bit more on your description of what you thought was funny about the tutor who was saying, that, I forget now exactly what,
Yeah,
that
not
she's
a
not a
coward.
coward. How that was funny, because even after you said that, it was like, we're still looking at each other going,
Yeah.
we don't get it.
I saw my sister yelling at me in that moment, telling me, all right, I don't care who you think you are. I'm not going to listen to what you have to say. Get lost. Go.
Okay. Another question?
From the balcony?
Yes.
Yes, I was wondering, how's the movie been received in Iran and also in the whole Middle East as a whole?
That's a good question.
Oh, did you hear the whole question?
Yeah, how's the movie received in Iran and the Middle East? It was a huge hit in Iran, huge. It was also a tremendous hit in Israel, and it caused a lot, people were really surprised at that. It's a huge box office success there. So it is actually a box office success everywhere it's opened in the world.
I'm delighted to hear that. Another question?
Yes. Over here to your right.
Michael, I know you're the distributor, but I was wondering if, just based on your conversations with the director, if you could speak a little bit about his process of working with the actors and getting those beautiful performances.
Well, he comes from the theater, and he knows, I believe he knows how to rehearse, and I think he connects with them on such a human level. What is amazing about Asghar is that he is one of these people that could go into any room and connect with the people there. Even if it's someone that is totally different politics than him, the total opposite, or people you would think would be so foreign, not at all. He knows how to connect in a human way to everybody. And that has been so impressive as he's promoted this film around the world. And I think that's probably very key. But you have to understand, these actors know each other very well, and Asghar picked them, and he's very, very close to them. I mean, look, his daughter plays the girl in the movie, and Payman has been in a few of his movies, and he knows them. These are like his actors.
I read an interview with him where he spoke about how he takes a very long time to cast his films, and that's really something he focuses on a lot. And another thing that he said in the interview that impressed me was that he really urged the actors to think of these characters only as characters and as not as representatives of a particular political or class issue, but just to be dealing with the emotion that was going on in their lives. Another question.
From the balcony.
Okay. Boy, balcony's doing great tonight.
Not necessarily pertaining to these individuals in this movie, but are women in higher classes in Iran less willing to put up with spousal abuse than in lower classes?
I would hope that the answer is yes, but honestly, I don't know. A good book to start with is Shireen Ebadi's autobiography, Iran Awakening. I think she gives a very, very honest account of her own plight as a female who's an attorney, who was once a judge, and projecting from there many aspects of struggles that women face. On the flip side, I'd also make two additional points that for much of at least the first part of the 90s, our understanding of Iran came from Not Without My Daughter. And I think that basically framed a lot of things for quite some time. The other point I would make is that Iran has, I believe, the highest female literacy rate of all the countries in the world. And if it's not number one, it's probably top three. Yeah. So the point I'm making is that spousal abuse is, I'm sure, taking place in Iran. I don't know that it's taking place any more in Iran than any other place.
I have a question, Omar. You know, the other thing I've noticed about Iranian cinema is there are so many movies about children.
Mm-hmm.
So many. Even before Kiarostami was around, you would see everyone would make movies about little kids, and that's why the really young children are always spectacular. There's a whole history of this in that particular culture in the filmmaking. Why is that?
Okay, so there's a few answers to this. First and foremost, there are film programs in Iran. In Iran, also, there's a department called the Institute for the Intellectual Development of Children and Young Adults. So this is a government agency that sponsors the production of children's movies. And in addition, all these filmmakers are able to provide social commentary, especially criticism of the government by way of children's stories. And that often plays out in the depiction of fathers in these movies.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. When we look at the evolution of Kiarostami, we see him starting out with these kids' movies that are produced by the Institute, and then he separates. He starts making more movies with adults as the central actors.
Panahi the same way.
Yeah, Jafar Panahi. His first big movie that crossed over here was White Balloon. So it was written by Abbas Kiarostami, and then he directed it. Yeah.
Majid Majidi too.
Majid Majidi is also from the Institute. Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. An interesting point about Majid Majidi, which makes a commentary about the Iranian government, is he makes Children of Heaven, which I think was also nominated for was it one of yours?
That's the only other one.
Okay.
That's the only other Iranian movie in history nominated for the Oscar.
Wonderful movie. And then he makes Color of Paradise, which I believe was screened here.
That was my movie.
That's yours. Now, the interesting thing is that if you watch the two movies, the movie that he makes separate from the Institute is about this blind boy and his connection with God. You don't find God in the movies that are from the Institute, which I think is a very, very interesting point.
That is fascinating. I had never known about that before. I just want to mention, though, since you're talking about favorite Iranian films, one of mine is Secret Ballot, which I think is just an amazing.
Also mine.
I think that's
lost money on that one.
I think that's I think it is a brilliant film. Okay, we got time for one more question, so let's make it a great one.
Okay, directly in front of you, almost to the door.
Right.
Hi, I'm Iranian. I'm an Iranian girl, and I have a lot to say about this movie, especially what you said. You all, first let me make some comment about some of the things that you said. First of all, the very simplest one, Simin is a Persian name. Actually, it's my sister's name, and it means silvery. Sim means silver, and simin means something that's silvery. And then another thing is that you said, which was one of the answers to your question, which was what I was thinking, was this, that you said that why Iranian make this much movie about kids. If you look at Iranian life, all of them tried, all of them constantly hope. Regardless of whatever happens, they always hope. And they always want the best for their kids. The family is extremely important. It's extremely important, at least to my knowledge, more than close to one of the highest respect for families happening in Iran. And you can see it in that movie, and at any level. The man cares so much for his father. Because even the father doesn't understand, but he has this consciousness that at every second he wants to take care of his father, and regardless of anything that happens. And the best way to save their family is in the future of those kids, and they invest a lot. And consider that all those limitations that these movie makers have, all these directors have. It's way much easier to make their statement when they are talking about their kids, because it's such a unifying team. When they are talking about their kids, even the most Islamic person or the religious person and the most agnostic person, they can unify at that point because all of them really care about their kids. So that's the point, that it's safe to make movie that way. Another thing that I wanted to say was this, that I thought, as an Iranian person, I thought that it was the most realistic portrayal of my country. It was the most amazing portrayal of my country. Most of the time when I see an Iranian movie, I find it very poetic. I find it wrapped in all these poetic statements because people are used to say things indirectly. And you saw it in that movie. People were unable to talk. They weren't able freely to make their statement. Why? Because those people have been the subject of so many dangers that's out of their control. And if you see in that movie, and amazingly is that my dad was a judge. And every time that he came home, he was complaining about it, that I know something is wrong, but I can't say anything about it. And then, even as a judge, sometimes he felt powerless. He felt totally helpless. He was coming home every day and he was telling, I hate this job. And then he was a colleague with Shirin Abadi that you mentioned, and all of them feel the same way. Even lawyer in that country, they know what is right. That's the question, that in that country, everybody knows what is right. And at so many levels, people really want to be right. It's so important for those people. And if you look, that guy, Nader, was trying so hard to be right in the eyes of her daughter. They try to be right, at least in the eyes of the people that they love the most, their family, the people that are close to them, the other people. And mostly for the people that they love the most, because it's their safety net, it's the protection mechanism that they have, that they developed for years. But another thing that was amazing for me was this, that you thought that it could connect with everybody. But I found it that I saw myself totally separated in that movie. I didn't think that I'm like any American. When I saw that movie, I saw the differences. I know that it was so localized that it became internationally important. It was like what Najib Mahfouz did. It was like he said, that he was so local that he got the audience over the whole world. He won the Nobel Prize because of that, because he was so local. I found it so local, that movie. And it was so true. And then the other thing that was very interesting for me is that those people are so helpless. At the end, they do wrong things. And then you don't think that they are wrong. That's the amazing thing. And it's the culture of Iranians. You don't think that anyone is wrong. At the end, you're always looking for someone to be wrong. And then people say, and it's very rare that people say that it was my responsibility.
I think that's human nature.
Yeah, and then, but it's more than, because first of all, I think that it's because law is not protecting them. Law is not protecting them, so people have to protect themselves. That's very easy. Like that father wants to teach her daughter how to protect yourself. He goes to a gas station. It doesn't matter. In Iran, normally people wait in the car, come, and then the man at the gas station comes and pump the gas for you in your car. But that guy uses that opportunity that his daughter goes out and asks him to go and ask for little money. I saw that money, the money was 10 cents. And that's the way that he wants to protect his daughter. So at any level, I find it very realistic, and at the same time, I find it very different than your culture. And one of the things that was very important was how it impacted Iranian culture. So for example, one thing that was important, sure, it was like that people were very happy. It was one of the very few moments that I saw my people that unified and that happy. That's what I wanted to say. It made us very proud. It made us really happy because the movie was great. And I'm so happy that people could see at least a little bit of our culture.
That's wonderful. Thank you very, very much. Couldn't have a better conclusion than that. And thank you to this wonderful panel.